Well, howdy everyone. As we wrap up Cowboy Month here at GL, I just wanted to say thanks, partner, to everyone who's come out for all the live streams, the events. We had a great Clint Eastwood impression contest a few weeks ago, and it's all just warm, fuzzy feelings here. We all pretended to ride horses. That was a very fruitful psychological exercise. Before we get on to the main video, I just wanted to say thanks to everybody who has supported us through the event, and we're looking forward to Water Park Madness in July. But for the meantime, saddle up and let's get on with the video. I recently found out that there are a number of new Fox animated shows, and I wanted to pit them against each other in sort of a Animation Domination death match, because I'm sure that in real life they are indeed competing with each other for their right to stay on the channel. If you're not familiar, or if you don't live in the United States, Fox is the only major television broadcast network to make adult animation shows a major part of their primetime schedule. This penchant for animated shows is something that they started to call Animation Domination in the early 2000s, and it sort of continued on in various forms since then. Fox was helped along in the beginning by The Simpsons, and then Family Guy came along a little bit later, and then towards, 2011 when Bob's Burgers came around. But outside of that, the other shows that were part of Animation Domination lineups haven't been nearly as successful. That lineup previously included shows like King of the Hill, Axe Cop, and the Family Guy spin-off shows American Dad and The Cleveland Show. But today, the Fox shows that I'm going to be talking about are Duncanville, The Great North, and Housebroken. I will briefly go into what the premise of each show is, and then talk about what I like and what I don't like. Just super simple internet media criticism for you. And at the very end, I'll pick a winner. I wouldn't usually compare shows directly to each other and say that one is just better than the other, but after my experiences of trying to watch these shows, it was not a good time. This is actually the third time that I've tried to put together a video talking about these shows, and it hasn't really gone well in the past. In fact, here's a clip from one of my previous attempts. Not one of them makes me laugh. I even tried recording reaction audio while watching different episodes of each one, but here's a quick taste of how that turned out. But now, finally, I think we're ready to go, and we're going to kick things off with Duncanville. I think the most accurate description I can give of Duncanville is to say that it's a sitcom, and it's a sitcom that desperately wants to be Family Guy. The animation and the character designs look quite similar, the sense of humor isn't that far off, and everything is centered on a boring family who live in the suburbs and have 3 kids, and the youngest kid is really wacky. One of the only things that makes Duncanville somewhat notable is the involvement of Amy Poehler, who's great. She's a very great comedic actor, obviously. She is a co-creator on the show, and she voices 2 of the main characters, including the title character. Jing is my favorite character. She's the only one who almost makes me laugh when I'm watching, and I appreciate that. She is voiced by Joy Osmansky. Rashida Jones is here. She voices a teenager who everyone's attracted to. If anything, I'm glad that she's taking money from Fox. Or is that technically just Disney money now? I mean, I guess she already had that Toy Story 4 gig, but what were we talking about? I don't have too much else to say here. Sorry, this one was rough. The rest of the main cast is bland as wet toast, and there's something off-putting about Amy Poehler's voice acting for the mom character. She's doing some kind of vague New England accent, I guess. Is that what it's supposed to be? Is it supposed to be like sort of Midwestern? But having any accent in that character just reminds me of Lois from Family Guy, period. I don't enjoy how ugly everything is. is visually. The show's backgrounds and character animations make me feel claustrophobic, which is not a great sign. Also, there's a character whose gimmick is like they get a bunch of free stuff from brands through Twitter, but all the brands are from the real world. So you just end up having product placement in the show through this character, and it always feels awful. Kind of like that Kevin Smith show that no one watched, where he's, very conveniently running a NASCAR team, so there are just logos everywhere all the time.
Hope you don't mind if our old friend Jack Daniels joins the conversation.
But I wouldn't do it to me. Wait, where did you guys get the culottes from?
I hadn't really thought about it much until now, but is adult animation the only place where the formulaic, sort of family-centric multicam sitcom still exists? Those shows have more or less disappeared from network TV, as far as I know. I think this is the last stronghold, and it's not looking too healthy. The Great North comes to us from the Molyneux, Lizzie and Wendy. These folks have worked extensively on Bob's Burgers, and the art style of the show is clearly based on the art style of Bob's Burgers. And if ratings really tank at some point for this one, I am sure that they will try a crossover episode. It's a show about a family who lives in Alaska, and they sometimes encounter conflicts specific to the setting, and other times they're just grappling with pretty typical sitcom-y stuff. I was going to go through the voice cast, but the casting falls into one of the categories, so let's just go for it. What I like? Well, I think the casting is one of the show's biggest assets, and in fact, the casting even seems a bit expensive to me. You've got Nick Offerman, who does a fine job. I think at this point he just gets typecast as the outdoorsy guy. They also got Jenny Slate somehow. I kind of thought she was transitioning into like big film roles, but maybe not. Maybe she actively wanted to do the show, but she's always wonderful. I mean, she even writes books now, books that I haven't read, but I'm sure they're good, maybe. Will Forte is here, I guess. Aparna Nancherla is officially on a network cash cow show now. I know she was on corporate, but I think that one got canceled like immediately, right? But this is good for her, I think, because I think she's a wonderful stand-up, although this might mean that she does less stand-up as a result, because that's just the way of the world. So I guess in that case, God. Solid cast, and they seem to have some kind of chemistry, even though I don't know whether they actually record together. Probably not, given that whole little history blip we just went through. What else is good here? For some reason, the change in setting compared to a lot of other adult animated shows really works for me. It's not just the suburbs again, and even just seeing snow in a lot of these settings makes me feel kind of nostalgic, and the Great North regularly takes advantage of the weather and the environment to cash some cozy checks. Just show the characters settling in for a nice movie night during a snowstorm, and I'm happy. Maybe it's just a basic human reaction thing, my primordial brain saying, oh good, they find shelter from cold. Some of the scenarios are genuinely funny, and that's all I have to say about that. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, it's still a network adult animation show that's trying to appeal to the broadest audience possible, so that brings some problems along with it. You kind of get the sense that the show itself wants to be a lot weirder than it is, kind of like how Bob's Burgers was uncomfortably intimate and specific in the early seasons, but instead it just ends up feeling quite normie most of the time. It also has that problem where you end up with a lot of awkward character blocking during dialogue-heavy scenes. Like, there's very little secondary action going on, so you just have characters standing around very still. I guess because they don't want to cram in more animation than they can realistically afford. But hey, this is even an issue with some live action shows as well, so maybe we just have to accept it. I don't like the theme song. It just feels messy and lopsided and not really in an interesting way. I think I'm done. Let's move on. Housebroken is a show about a support group for neighborhood pets. What a fun and quirky concept, right? Lisa Kudrow plays the lead, and there are lots of predictable animal jokes in the mix. I like that the characters move around, and that we don't see, that it doesn't look unfinished, I suppose. I like how some of the animal designs are not repulsively ugly. Lisa Kudrow has a distinctive voice. that's a positive, I guess. Most things. I don't like most things about this show, and I know that sounds very much like YouTube critic hyperbole, but I did not have a good time with this one at all. I watched about 5 episodes, and I could not bring myself to finish a whole season. I just found nothing interesting here. None of the characters stand out as especially likable. The crude jokes feel cloying and out of place, and Jason Mantzoukas is here for some reason, giving the same performance he gives in everything.
Listen, you wanna go? Okay, buddy. Let's dance.
Somebody has got to teach him about our Lord and Savior.
Yeah, I'm not gay, dude.
I have heard so much talking from you.
Housebroken feels like Big Mouth, but worse. Somehow less interesting and more ugly. Well, okay, nothing is uglier than Big Mouth, but still, this show is one of my least favorite animated properties of any kind, and I've had real difficulty trying to imagine an audience for the show. Okay, folks, it's time to choose a winner out of these 3 generally unremarkable television programs, even though my little reviews here probably made it obvious which one was my favorite. Yep, that's right. The winner is The Great North. Hooray! Yeah! It's not a show that I'd go out of my way to watch, but after a few hours of Duncanville and Housebroken, I was more than happy to dip back into the adventures of the Alaska family. What's their last name? Would it be funnier to just not look it up? Sure, I love the Alaska family. They're the best. They're the best out there. And that brings our little mainstream animation deathmatch to a close. Duncanville and Housebroken, I'm sorry, but you're just out of the picture, which really means that these will continue to be renewed for several years before becoming too bland even for their diehard fans. Thank you so much for joining me, and if you'd like to help out my adorable little channel, just click around below the video at random. You're sure to trigger some kind of engagement. Until next time, thanks for stopping by.